With each cake and loaf they bake, these women are rebuilding their lives. When they and their families fled from the fighting that has torn El Salvador apart, they lost everything they had spent their lives struggling for. But recently, with the help of an international development organization, the women started a bakery to produce bread for their new community. While her husband looks for work in a nearby town, Natividad de Mercedes cares for her 6 children and works several hours in the bakery.
There's a big difference in my life here because now I'm earning money to feed my children.
This is the story of millions of women throughout the Third World who, like Natividad, are central figures in the daily struggle against hunger. But unlike Natividad, most women do not have the means to earn income to buy food or to increase their production of food. Their contributions uncounted, their efforts unaided. Women nonetheless produce 70% of the food grown in the Third World. One out of every 5 people is chronically hungry. 1 billion people, most of them in Latin America, Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. And the most malnourished and hungry of all are women and children. Food relief saves lives this week, this month, but it is not a long-term solution. Sadly, many efforts to fight world hunger ignore a basic fact, that women play a critical role in feeding the world. U.S. Senator Nancy Kassebaum, a leading specialist in African affairs, believes women deserve more attention.
I really don't believe in the past that there has been very much recognition on the part of those shaping policy of the importance of women in agriculture in the developing countries. And this is very true in Africa, but I think you can see it around the world.
The contributions of women farmers seldom show up in official statistics. Thus, they are ignored by many development planners and extension workers who could provide them with the training, tools, and credit they need to increase production. Many developing nations channel their best resources, the best land, machinery, and technical expertise, into the expansion of commercial crops for cash and export to other nations. Men run the machines on these farms, while women perform most of the backbreaking manual labor, earning far less than the men. And when the women return home to tend their family plots, they have fewer resources to produce the food upon which entire villages depend for survival. So many countries are forced to import food or depend on food aid. In rural Senegal, women rise before the sun and work all day in activities related to producing food. Their ancient methods are time-consuming, often requiring many hours a day just to pound millet. "55-year-old Yai Awa has raised and fed 2 generations. She's worked hard her whole life, but has little to show for it. She also farms a small plot of land owned by her husband. From planting and harvesting to processing and marketing, she is responsible for every link in her family's food chain. Drought and ever longer dry seasons have forced Yayawa and millions of women like her in sub-Saharan Africa to spend several hours a day carrying the water they need for laundry, cooking, and farming. Yayawa spoke about what she wants most in life.
My biggest wish is to grow enough food to feed my family and earn some money.
Yayawa's wish could come true. Recently, the villagers dug 2 wells and bought buckets and seeds. The women are now growing 8 kinds of vegetables. But the long, dry seasons and severe drought cause their wells to run dry periodically. Without funds and technology for newer and deeper wells, for pumps and irrigation, their garden project may fail. If Africa is to achieve self-sufficiency in food, Senegalese Ambassador Falilou Khan believes that rural women will need access to credit.
So they need this credit. Let's say to have the seeds, they need to buy it, to have fertilizers. Sometimes they need to have pumps to get the water from the wells. It can be done, and we are doing that in many areas, but having it on a wider base and more efficient base will help them maybe double or triple what their own crop.
As Africans struggle to survive, Central Americans are suffering the worst economic crisis in recent history. In rural northern Honduras, annual per capita income is $150. While there is generally enough food available, people are often malnourished because they cannot afford nutritious food. In the Honduran village of Los Laureles, where women have traditionally raised pigs to provide pork for their families, OEF International is helping them to breed swine to sell commercially. The women have learned how to keep careful records of the pig's weight and to give the pigs anti-parasite, iron, and vitamin shots. These women hope to make a profit when they sell the swine to another group of women down the road in Los Caraos, where the animals are fattened for market. Here, the women are improving the quality of their animals by feeding them a special mixture they have developed from soy and bone meal, wheat, vitamins, and corn they grow. And this is not all they produce. Pig waste mixed with water ferments in the ground and yields biogas, which is carried by pipe to a cooking stove. The gas replaces the wood normally burned in the stove. Applied on a large scale, this technology could save trees in a place where deforestation threatens the environment. The first female agronomists in Honduras are helping the women develop agricultural and business skills, such as bookkeeping and taking inventory. Doña Mina Claros has lived most of her 50 years in a thatched hut with no running water or modern conveniences. She raised 9 children and helps care for her 12 grandchildren. Recently, she built an energy-efficient wood stove. This is one of the improvements in her life that has come from working in the group enterprise.
If I had done this 20 years ago, my life would be different because I wouldn't be living in the poverty we live in now. With the energy of my youth, I would have had a nice home to live in, and the food for my family would have been better.
Each month, Doña Mina and her business partners visit the San Martin pork processing plant. Here they receive payment for a recent shipment of swine. Money they use to reinvest in supplies, pay interest on their loan, and buy food for their families. For the first time, they taste the sweet sausage made from their pigs. The women pig farmers travel from the countryside to the commercial center of San Pedro Sula to pay the interest on their loans. Without this special credit program arranged by OEF, the women could not start or expand their swine production enterprises. Women in the third world seldom get loans. Bankers consider them poor credit risks because they rarely have legal title to land and have little or no collateral. Senor Eloy Paje explains why his bank is an exception and agreed to lend money to the women.
Because they live in the rural parts of our country, and we have faith that this program is going to help these people, and we have an experience that the women are more responsible than men.
In the small Senegalese seacoast town of Mbao, women buy fish from the men. They dry the fish on the sand for 2 weeks, then sell it by the bag to middlemen who transport it farther inland and resell it at a profit. For their 2 weeks of work, the women consider themselves lucky to earn 50 cents each. They meet regularly to discuss their problems with a member of the Senegalese Federation of Women's Associations. Madame Fatou Diakate, a medical secretary in the capital city of Dakar, believes her volunteer work is important.
I didn't know anyone here, but I'm personally motivated because I believe that our country's development depends on the rural people. So it is up to us, the urban women who have resources, to have the rural women organize themselves for development.
OEF International will train Fatou and others to help the women of Mbao. Together they will improve their method of fish drying with solar sheds, increase their profit margins, and start a gardening project. Determined to succeed, the women already have a name for their group. Tire yourselves out to make money. If women are able to organize and achieve equitable systems and policies, the ripple effect of projects like these can contribute to the economic and political stability of developing nations. In response to requests from private citizens, U.S. legislators are giving more attention to programs that reach rural women and enable them to become more productive. Senator Kassabaum comments.
We in the United States are a very generous people. When there was the famine in Ethiopia, millions of dollars were raised privately, as well as government support money that was given. But we're going to face those conditions again if we don't address in a far better way than we have the need to increase per capita agriculture production in Africa. So I think it is of the greatest importance.
Umoja, unity that brings us together. Umoja, unity that brings us together. Umoja.
The problems of feeding the world are enormous. Long-term solutions demand that we recognize the pivotal role of third world women in fighting hunger. We in the United States can become partners with these women. We can support programs and policies that empower them to improve their lives. The increasing interdependence of our world demands nothing less.
We'll spend our money wisely. We'll spend our money wisely.
If we care enough to make a commitment, then we can end the shameful tragedy of world hunger. The crisis is real, the challenge is urgent, and the choices are ours.
We know the purpose of our life. We know the purpose of our life. All that we touch is more beautiful. All that we touch is more beautiful. All that we touch is more beautiful. Imani, we believe that we can. We know that we can. We will anyway. That we can.
Today, most of the people on our planet live in third world countries. Also known as developing countries or less developed countries, these nations are located primarily in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. They account for 70% of the world's population, but possess only about 30% of the world's wealth. Until the 1950s, many of these nations were colonies of European powers like Great Britain and France, and their economies were geared toward producing export crops like tea and coffee, which would benefit their colonizers. Once these colonies gained independence, they focused their efforts on raising the standard of living of their people. These efforts are called development. Development. It's a term often heard when third world nations are discussed. Some people claim that if development doesn't happen, the peace and security of the entire planet may be in jeopardy. Hello, I'm Paul Anthony. What exactly is development, and what is it trying to accomplish? In general, development seeks to help people lead better, healthier, fuller lives by alleviating the problems caused by poverty. There are poor people in industrialized countries, including the United States. But for the most part, the poverty in developing countries is much worse and affects many more people. It keeps people hungry, malnourished, in poor health, illiterate, and without jobs or economic opportunities to improve their condition. Many steps can be taken to improve these conditions. People and countries often disagree about which steps are best. But experts do agree on two things. The economies of the third world nations must grow to provide people with the goods and services they need. And those goods and services must be distributed fairly. To achieve these goals, a number of things must happen. Most of the people in third world countries live in rural areas and farm for a living. So one step in development is to help them improve their farming methods. By improving these methods, they will grow more food for their families, improve their diets, perhaps sell more crops, and earn more money. But to get their crops to market, farm families need better roads. This is where another step in development enters the picture: improving infrastructure. Infrastructure consists of the roads, dams, bridges, and communication systems that every nation needs to carry out its basic activities. For example, industrial development would be difficult, if not impossible, without infrastructure. Industries enable people to produce goods and services that they can use themselves or export for sale to other nations. Development also means people who are educated and trained, people who can keep written records, operate and repair machinery, provide health care, and teach and train others. Stimulating foreign trade is another step in development. Countries need exports so they can import the goods and services they cannot produce themselves. Often, developing countries can export only a few products, usually food commodities or raw materials. But if the demand for these products declines, their economies suffer. So the basic components of development include improving agricultural production, building infrastructure, developing industry, promoting education, and increasing foreign trade. Other essential components are slowing down population growth, helping the poorest people, and improving opportunities for women. Many industrial nations contribute to development. The United States, for example, provides grants, loans, food, and technical assistance. Such help is called bilateral aid. Developing countries also receive financial help from international organizations, such as the United Nations and the World Bank. This help is called multilateral aid. Nonprofit and charitable organizations also give assistance. But most development activities are financed by the countries themselves. Today, many people in third world countries are better off than their parents were a generation ago. They are better fed, better housed, and have access to better paying jobs. But in spite of the progress made, there is still much to be done. In many countries, the lives of the very poorest people have been untouched by development. They continue to eke out an impoverished existence even as the living conditions of others in their countries improve. The poverty and the problems it causes are so widespread and deeply rooted that it will take many years before many of these countries reach levels of development acceptable to all their citizens. Why should we in the United States care whether or not development happens? The answer can best be summed up in one word: interdependence. We live in a global village, which means that trade, transportation, communications, and information systems draw the people of the world closer together each day. The third world needs our technology and financial assistance, and we need their markets for our exports. Today, many say that the planet cannot exist peacefully. Many years before many of these countries reach levels of development acceptable to all their citizens. Why should we in the United States care whether or not development happens? The answer can best be summed up in one word: interdependence. We live in a global village, which means that trade, transportation, communications, and information systems draw the people of the world closer together each day. The third world needs our technology and financial assistance, and we need their markets for our exports. Today, many say that the planet cannot exist peacefully with most of the third world living in poverty. Development is a way to overcome poverty. Watch Global Links and learn more about it.
I thought the Global Links program was really educational, and it taught us a lot about the underprivileged nations and what we need to do to help them.
I thought the Global Links program was very interesting, and it taught me a lot of stuff that I never knew about underdeveloped countries and stuff. You usually picture people just dying or not doing anything constructive, but they really are trying to, somewhat trying to change. There's a lot going on.
These students are talking about Global Links, a new PBS series which looks at the complex yet compelling issue of third world development.
What impressed me most about the Global Links program was how the people were working consistently to help themselves have a better life.
I thought it was very good and educational, and I think provided us more of an outlook on the world around us.
Filmed in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, the series examines the most urgent development issues of our time. Instructors Barbara Graves and Fred Crouch give their impressions of the series.
I feel that teachers all over the country will be very interested in the series because there are a lot of concepts that the series develops that I think we as teachers are becoming more and more concerned with, and they raise a lot of the issues that we're dealing with in a global society.
And I feel that the use of the program can help Americans and our students especially get a feeling and understanding for the world, and I think that's the most important thing that we have to offer them, and I highly recommend using the series.
In the island of Bali in Indonesia, the cultivation of rice is often celebrated with a dance. More than 95% of the world's rice is produced in the third world. And for more than 1.5 billion low-income people in Asia and hundreds of millions in Africa and Latin America, rice is their major source of sustenance. Not too long ago, Indonesia imported more rice than any other country in the world. Today, the country is not only self-sufficient, but now has enough rice for export. In Bali, traditional dances, rituals, and festivities are closely linked to rice production. In the fields, women do the harvesting when the rice is ripe. Traditions have a direct impact on the productivity of these societies. And this is a key element in the conception of programs directed to strengthen the fragile economies of the third world. These cultural expressions are indeed different from those of the industrialized countries, and the role traditions play in the lives of these people is often overlooked or misunderstood.
Western perception of the Third World is often based on cultural and economic differences. Not so obvious are the similarities, those basic human values found in any society, the desire to lead a peaceful existence and to have enough to feed and educate the family.
An instructor's guide accompanies the series, making it an important resource for the following college and secondary school courses. At the secondary level, world history, world geography, anthropology, economics, and international studies. And at the university level, international relations, anthropology, economics, women's studies, Asian, African, and Latin American studies, environmental studies, public health, and urban planning. The goals of the series are to enable students to describe some of the social and economic problems facing third world nations, describe some of the strategies used to overcome these obstacles, understand that the world has become increasingly interdependent, and explain why third world development is important to both developing and industrialized nations. With this series, preparation activities are essential. The guide includes background information for instructors and previewing activities for students. Instructor Barbara Graves familiarizes students with the geographic locations in one of the programs.
If I would name for you a list of countries, a string of countries in the world, would you be able to tell me where you would expect to find these countries? Where would you expect to find Benin, the country of Benin? Anne?
Maybe like in Africa or someplace, like South America.
Okay, but it's not, you're not really sure where Benin is, so maybe after you see this film you'll have a better understanding. What about Togo? Where do you think Togo might be, Raymond?
Is it some third world country or Africa or Middle East?
With a class of older students, instructor Fred Crouch introduces the opinion survey, which makes students more aware of their own perceptions of third world development.
Circle A or D. A means you agree with the statement. I'll read the statements. D means you disagree with the statement. After the film, we will pass these back out, or we'll go back over these attitude surveys and see if your attitudes have changed.
After the previewing activities, students watch the program. The instructor has the option of stopping the tape to reinforce a point.
I'm going to stop the videotape at this point because I want you to realize now you're in South America, you're in Recife in Brazil.
In the poorer sections of the cities, health conditions are sometimes worse than in the countryside. Infectious diseases claim millions of lives from the poor neighborhoods every year. Contaminated water supplies, lack of sanitation and appropriate waste disposal make diarrheal diseases one of the worst health problems in the slums. Overcrowding and poor housing facilities add to the problems. Children are forced to play in the raw filth of the cities. Malnutrition is rampant, and in some communities, 1 child out of every 4 never reaches his 5th birthday.
Post-viewing activities begin with classroom discussions. The questions are designed to enhance students' critical thinking skills and to deepen their understanding about the development process.
In order for countries to have the kind of things that you're talking about, which would be a water supply, a clean water supply, and to be able to have a water supply that was in a better location for them, either at a well or at a tap or something, what would have to be done and what is involved in this process of giving them cleaner water, more accessible water? What's involved in that, George?
Well, first of all, I think they would need more money and outside help. And then you'd have to build irrigation and have pipes to go into the homes, so that therefore they'd have to have well-structured homes. You know, a clay hut may not be able to help any.
Discussion questions also promote cross-cultural sensitivity by having students compare and contrast their environment with the third world.
How are the diseases you've seen here, or the living conditions you've seen here, how are they different than the kinds of diseases that you are familiar with as a person who lives here in the United States?
The diseases there are like disabling diseases and diseases that maim you or make you unable to work. Diseases here are most like cancer or something, like you're still able to work, but as time goes by, you get weaker and weaker. And they can't work. They live, but they just can't work or do anything. And they're just like a burden to their community.
A review of the opinion survey completes the lesson. Reviewing it allows the students to take a critical look at their own attitudes and information base about the developing world.
Okay, number 8, the industrialized world does not rely on the developing world at all. Attitude on that, did you agree or disagree? Anybody want to comment? And Janice?
I disagree because, you know, the whole world relies on everybody because we use their market. We sell, you know, developing worlds. The United States sells developing worlds a lot of stuff, and we use their market trade. They make a lot of stuff, crafts and stuff like that, that we, you know, buy from them. Everyone relies on each other, and if one world piece of it falls apart, the whole thing does.
Has anybody changed their attitude after watching the film towards the developing world and looking at the list that we have, the attitude survey? Let's try John.
We did one, new technology always brings positive change to a society. I agreed before I saw the film, but after I saw it, I cheated. I circled the D. Because I saw that they didn't have that much technology, but they were still doing what they had to do and still being pretty successful in their own nation.
Post-viewing follow-up activities include short-range activities, which students can do in groups, and long-range activities, which may require additional research. Global Links offers an innovative and unique approach to teaching global education. It will not only stimulate critical thinking about the actual process of third world development, but it will move students towards a deeper understanding of the implications of our global interdependence.